Konnichiwa. Today we're going to talk about the conditional ba reba. Last week we looked at the to conditional and we saw that its particular characteristic was its exclusiveness, its implication that only one outcome is possible. In many cases we can use any or most of the conditionals without changing the meaning to any great extent, but each conditional has its own particular qualities. So today we're going to look at the special quality of ba reba and some of the things it does and why it does them. First of all, what is ba reba? Ba reba is a helper which we put onto the e stem of a verb. The e stem is one of the lesser used stems, but ba reba is one of the things that uses it. So, for go-down verbs, we put it onto the e stem, and for ichi-down verbs, as always, we simply take off the ru and add its ichi-down form reba. For the two irregular verbs, in this case, they work exactly like regular ichi-down verbs. So kuru becomes kureba, and suru becomes sureba. Actually, kuru and suru, I would say, are in fact ichi-down verbs, but they're strong ichi-down verbs. A strong verb is a verb that can change its vowel sound. In English we have come and came, eat and ate, and kuru and suru in some cases change their vowel sound. Kuru in the negative becomes konnai, suru becomes shinnai. But in this case, they don't change their vowel sound at all, so that's very simple. They just work like the ichi-down verbs that they fundamentally are. For adjectives, we take off the I and use the helper kereba. You might notice that when we do anything with an adjective other than simply take off the I and add whatever we're going to add, the specific adjectival modifications all come from the ka, ki, ku, ke, ko row. So, the negative of an adjective is kunai, omoshiroi, omoshirokunai. The past is katta, omoshiroi, omoshirokata. And the ba conditional is kereba, omoshiroi, omoshirokereba. So in a way we could say that if adjectives had an e stem, it would be ke, and that's what we use in this case. So what's the special characteristic of ba reba? To, as we know, its special characteristic is its exclusiveness. The special characteristic of ba reba is that it is used for hypotheticals. So it must always mean if. It can't ever mean when, because we never know for sure if the condition will take place. And consequently, if we use it about something that happened in the past, it has to be something that didn't happen, because if it did happen, we wouldn't be dealing with a hypothesis. We'd be dealing with a fact. Now this hypothetical nature of ba reba allows it to be used in many common and very important Japanese expressions. For example, do sureba ii. What this literally means is, how if I act will be good. And I'll just note here that while suru is generally translated as do, in many cases the best way to render it into English is as act. So for example, if we say shizuka ni suru, we're not saying do quietly, we're saying act quietly. So, do sureba ii, how if I act will be good. And in English what we'd normally say is what should I do? But in Japanese we don't say that. As we'll see, this is partly because the concept of should isn't quite the same in Japanese, and ba reba is often used to solve the problem. We'll come back to that in a moment. Another common use of ba reba is in sureba yokatta. For example, kasa omotte kureba yokatta. In English we would say, I should have brought an umbrella. What we're actually saying here is, if I had brought an umbrella, it would have been good. Motte kuru, as I've explained elsewhere, we join the word carry and the word come to mean bring, carry to here. And we notice that yokatta throws it into the past tense. As you know, in Japanese, we mark the past tense at the end of a logical clause. So even though it may be true that if it's raining right now, if I had bought an umbrella, it would have been good, and it still would be good, we throw the whole thing into the past tense with that final yokatta. Kasa omotte kureba yokatta. I should have brought an umbrella. I wish I had brought an umbrella. Now notice that in both these cases, dosureba ii, kasa omotte kureba yokatta. We are using this, if it were done it would be good, to mean should. And this happens again in an even commoner Japanese construction. Benkyou shinakereba ikemasen. If I don't study, it won't go, it won't do. Now what we're actually saying here is I must study. There actually isn't a word for must in Japanese, so we always construct it this way. We say, if I don't, whatever it is, and then we can say, it won't be good, it will be bad, it will be a disaster, whatever we say. Some negative construction then follows this, and what we're saying is, I must go, I've got to go, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. And this is because we don't have that construction got to, and we don't have must in Japanese. It always has this rather lengthy, if I don't do it won't be good, if I don't do it won't do, if I don't do, it's bad. Nakereba dame. And because it is indeed a very long-winded way of saying something common, like must or got to, it often gets cut down in casual speech to just shinakereba or even shinakya, which is short for shinakereba, without adding the negative ending because that's just implied. However, even in very casual speech, it's often said in full, and I think this is to emphasize the nature of the must. Naze ikanakereba ikenai? Why have I got to come? In cases like that where we're putting stress on it, as opposed to cases where we're just saying casually, ikanakya, I've got to go. So this is the special characteristic of ba reba, that it's dealing with hypotheticals. If you have any questions or comments, please put them in the comments below, and I will answer as usual. I'd like to thank my Gold Kokeshi patrons who make these videos possible, and all my patrons and supporters on Patreon and everywhere. And I'd like to thank you for attending this lesson. Korekara mo yoroshiku onegai shimasu. Class dismissed.